Your guard sold your life for a shuttle seat. Princess Evelyn Sale did not understand the sentence at first. The hallway around her was dark, the polished crystal walls cracked from floor to ceiling, the palace alarms stuttering like a dying heartbeat. Somewhere behind those sealed doors, the royal aegis, the finest protectors in the Varan ascendancy, had abandoned their posts. Evelyn stood barefoot on the cold floor, one hand pressed against the torn sleeve of her ceremonial gown, staring at the emergency lift where her own guards had disappeared without her. Then a calm human voice spoke from behind her. "Stay behind me, Your Highness." She turned and saw Jack Callahan standing between her and the smoke-filled corridor, his black suit dusty, his tie gone, his face pale but steady. No energy shield, no royal armor, no shining spear. Just a man from Earth holding a small flashlight in one hand and the palace evacuation map in the other, as if the end of her world was a problem that could still be worked through one step at a time. 3 days earlier, Evelyn had hired him because it looked good. That was the truth she hated most later. Her advisors had called it a symbol of progress. A human bodyguard beside the Varan princess during the Earth Treaty ceremony would show openness, humility, a new era of trust. Evelyn had agreed because cameras loved symbols, and her people needed to see that Earth was not a threat. Jack Callahan arrived at the western docking terrace with one duffel bag, one wrinkled overcoat, and the tired posture of a man who had spent too many nights sleeping in chairs. He was 38, white, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven except for a little gray at his jaw, and painfully unimpressed by the floating gardens, silver towers, and 1,000-foot banners hanging across the royal district. When Evelyn first met him, she expected awe. Most off-worlders stared at the palace like they had walked into heaven by mistake. Jack glanced up once, then looked for the exits. "Princess Evelyn Sale," she said, offering a formal hand. "Mr. Callahan, welcome to Vera." He shook her hand gently, careful with her 4 long fingers. "Ma'am." That was it. No speech, no compliment, no trembling before the throne. Her chief of security, Captain Adrian Kell, gave a soft laugh from behind her. "The human seems brief." Jack looked at him, then at the 24 armored guards standing in perfect decorative formation. "Brief keeps people alive." Evelyn almost smiled, thinking it was some rough American joke. Then Jack opened a paper notebook and started asking questions no one had asked her in years. How many stairwells actually work if the power drops? Who controls the manual locks? Why is the East Service Hall missing from this map? Does your kitchen staff get screened by palace security or by a contractor? And why is your evacuation shuttle closer to your guards than it is to you? Captain Kell stiffened. "Our systems have protected the royal line for 9 centuries. Jack nodded, writing something down. "Systems fail. People panic. Doors jam. Elevators stop. Somebody forgets a key." Evelyn felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Mr. Callahan, this is a peace ceremony, not a battlefield." He looked at her then, not rudely, not coldly, but with a quiet sadness that made her suddenly feel young. "Ma'am, everybody says that before the shooting starts." The room went silent. Kell's mouth tightened with insult. Evelyn forced a polite smile for the staff watching them. She had hired this human to make a statement, not to embarrass her palace. But as Jack turned back to the map, tracing one plain finger along a forgotten service corridor, she noticed something unsettling. He was not trying to look brave. He was not trying to win respect. He was counting ways she could die, and taking each one personally. By the next morning, Jack Callahan had become the most expensive joke in the royal palace. Servants glanced at him and looked away too quickly. Junior guards copied his slow Montana walk in the corridors when they thought he could not see them. One young officer even asked if his people still used wheels on their vehicles, and Jack only said, "When they work." That made the room laugh harder, because no one could tell if he had been insulted or not. Princess Evelyn watched it all from the upper balcony of the security atrium, telling herself this was only a cultural adjustment. The royal aegis trained under a glass dome 300 feet wide, moving through glowing obstacle grids with perfect elegance. Their armor shimmered like liquid moonlight. Their training blades left blue arcs in the air. Every step looked ancient, disciplined, beautiful. Then Jack walked onto the floor in a plain black training shirt, gray pants, and running shoes from Earth. He carried no spear, no shield disc, no ceremonial weapon, only a battered canvas range bag, and a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Captain Adrian Kell spread his arms, as if presenting a stray animal to the court. Our honored human consultant has agreed to observe our defensive drills. Jack looked at the obstacle grid, then at the balcony exits, then at the guards standing shoulder to shoulder below the princess. You are too close together. Kell blinked. Excuse me. Your people bunch up around the principal. Looks good in a parade. Bad in a hallway. A few guards laughed under their helmets. Kell smiled thinly. And how would Earth arrange a royal detail? Jack took a slow drink of coffee, made a face at the taste, and set it down. First, I would stop putting every armed person between her and the same door. Second, I would clear the blind corner near that service arch. Third, I would ask why your emergency lights are tied to the same grid as your decorative fountains. Evelyn leaned forward before she could stop herself. Kell followed Jack's gaze, and his smile faded just a little. Those systems are separate. Jack pointed with 2 fingers. Panel says otherwise. A technician hurried over, checked the wall display, and lowered his head. The room got quieter, but not humble. Not yet. Kell stepped closer, towering over Jack with polished royal confidence. You notice wires and doors. Admirable. But protecting a princess requires more than suspicion. It requires breeding, reflex, and courage. Jack looked up at him. Mostly it requires staying. The words landed softly, but Evelyn felt them from across the atrium. Kell's jaw tightened. Run the breach drill, he ordered. The lights dimmed. 3 practice drones swept toward the mock royal platform, moving fast enough to blur. The Aegis reacted beautifully, shields blooming, blades turning, armor flashing in a pattern taught for centuries. It lasted 14 seconds before the simulation paused, and the ceiling rang with a polite tone. The instructor announced, Principal lost. Kell snapped around. Impossible. Jack had not moved from his spot. He tapped the side of his coffee cup. Drone 3 never attacked. It drew your right flank 6 feet out of position. That opened a straight line from the maintenance hatch to the platform. If that had been real, she would have been alone before you knew the fight started. No one laughed this time. Evelyn looked down at the maintenance hatch. Half hidden behind a silver column she had passed 1,000 times without noticing. For the first time, the palace looked less like a fortress and more like a stage set, bright and flawless from the front, hollow behind the walls. Kell recovered with a sharp breath. A clever observation from a primitive mind. Jack picked up his bag. Primitive minds test the locks. He turned toward Evelyn and gave the smallest nod. Not a bow, not a performance, just a quiet signal that he had seen another problem and would keep it to himself until he understood it. Evelyn should have felt offended by his bluntness. Instead, as the perfect guards resumed their perfect formation, she found herself watching the human who kept looking at the exits. The treaty ceremony began with too much light. That was the first thing Jack noticed. The Grand Hall of Vera had been polished until every silver column reflected every face twice, and the ceiling glowed with soft blue starfields meant to flatter the cameras. Musicians played from a balcony above the West Arch. Diplomats smiled in careful little pieces. Evelyn moved through it all like she had been built for rooms this large, her pale blue-silver skin catching the light, her shoulders straight, her voice warm enough to make nervous people believe tomorrow might be better. Jack stayed 10 feet behind her left shoulder, close enough to move, far enough to avoid becoming part of the photograph. Captain Kell hated that. He wanted the human in the assigned position near the rear security line, where visiting personnel were supposed to stand and look grateful. Jack ignored the mark on the floor. Kell leaned toward him as Evelyn greeted the Earth delegation. You are out of place. Jack kept his eyes on the crowd. That is usually where trouble starts. Kell gave a quiet, polished laugh. In this hall, Mr. Callahan, trouble needs an invitation. Jack watched a server pass beneath the musicians, carrying a tray of crystal cups. The server shifted the tray from right hand to left without adjusting balance. Smooth. Practiced. Not nervous. Then the same server walked past an open service arch and did not glance inside, even though every local servant Jack had watched that morning checked every doorway before entering a royal room. Little habits kept people alive. Broken habits got his attention. Who hired the catering staff? Jack asked. Kell exhaled through his nose. You are suspicious of refreshments now. I am suspicious of people who forget their own routine. Evelyn heard that and turned slightly. Her public smile stayed in place, but her eyes found his. Is there a problem? Jack looked past her toward the East Gallery. A nobleman in a white ceremonial coat stood near Lord Marcus Vale. Everyone around him reacted when the treaty bells chimed. He did not. No blink. No shoulder twitch. Nothing. Jack felt the old weight settle in his chest, the same feeling he remembered from dusty roads overseas, from quiet farmhouses where dogs had stopped barking, from neighborhoods where every curtain closed at once. He was not scared yet. Scared came later, when there was time. Right now, his mind was just clearing the table. Maybe nothing, he said softly. But I do not like nothing. Evelyn's smile thinned. That is not comforting. Was not meant to be. She studied him for half a second longer, then turned back to the council delegation as if nothing had happened. Jack respected that. Most people wanted panic to look dramatic so they could recognize it. Evelyn was learning that real danger often arrived dressed as normal. He reached slowly to his jacket and unbuttoned it. A Bodyguard near him noticed and placed one hand on his energy baton. Jack did not look at him. Relax, he said. If I was the problem, you would be late. The guard stared, unsure if that was an insult or a warning. Across the hall, Lord Marcus raised a glass toward Evelyn, smiling like family. Jack watched his fingers. Not the glass. Not the face. The fingers. Marcus tapped twice against the stem, paused, then tapped once more. Near the service arch, the strange server changed direction. Jack's pulse slowed. That always surprised people when they asked about Earth soldiers. They thought the heart raced before trouble. Sometimes it did. But sometimes the body got cold and practical, like it already knew the bill had come due. Evelyn stepped onto the signing platform. The Earth ambassador opened the treaty case. Cameras floated closer. The royal aegis tightened formation around the wrong side of the stage, beautiful as a painting and just as flat. Jack moved 3 steps closer to Evelyn. Kel hissed, "Stand down." Jack saw the maintenance panel beside the east arch flash once, too quick for the crowd to notice. He heard the music skip half a beat. Then every decorative fountain in the hall stopped running at the exact same time. Jack turned his head toward Evelyn and said the one sentence no royal protocol had prepared her to hear. "Get behind me now. Get behind me now." Evelyn did not move fast enough, because princesses were taught to glide, not dive. Jack grabbed the back of her ceremonial sash and pulled her off the signing platform 1 second before the world went white. It was not an explosion like the ones in old Earth movies. There was no big orange fireball, no dramatic wave rolling across the hall. It was cleaner than that, colder than that, a hard blue pulse that passed through the palace like a silent verdict. Every shield in the grand hall died at once. The floating cameras dropped. The music cut out. The royal drones fell from their perfect little circles and clattered across the marble floor. For half a heartbeat, nobody screamed. The room was too shocked for sound. Then the emergency lights kicked on, dull red and ugly, and the most powerful chamber in the Varan ascendancy turned into a room full of frightened people looking for someone else to save them. Jack landed behind the treaty table with Evelyn under one arm. He did not land gracefully. His shoulder hit the floor hard, and pain flashed across his face before he shoved it down where he kept everything inconvenient. "Can you breathe?" he asked. Evelyn stared at him, stunned. "What? Can you breathe, ma'am?" She pulled an air, shaky but real. "Yes." "Good. Stay low." Across the hall, Captain Kell was shouting orders into a dead command link. His silver armor had gone dark, its elegant glow reduced to dull metal. The royal aegis looked bigger without their shields, but not stronger. They looked like people who had memorized a dance and just discovered the floor was gone. From the east service arch, the false server stepped out with 5 others in plain palace uniforms. Their movements were too calm, too prepared. Each carried compact equipment hidden under folded cloth and ceremonial trays. No panic, no confusion. They had rehearsed this. Kell raised his baton. Defensive circle around the princess. Half his guards moved the wrong way, trying to follow old protocol markers that were no longer lit. 2 collided near the broken camera rail. One kept tapping his dead wrist console, as if respect for procedure could bring the system back online. Jack saw the shape of the attack in 3 seconds. The pulse had not been meant to destroy the room. It had been meant to remove everything the Varans trusted. "Kell," Jack called. "Move her to the north stairs." Kell snapped. "You will not give commands in my hall." Jack looked at the service arch, Then at the upper balcony, where another maintenance panel opened with a soft click. Not your hall anymore. Evelyn heard that, and something cold moved through her. The human was not being rude. He was stating a fact. The palace had changed hands, and most of her protectors had not noticed. The first intruder lifted a device toward the platform. Jack moved before Evelyn could track him. His hand came up from inside his jacket. There were 2 sharp cracks, and the device spun away across the floor. The intruder dropped behind a column and did not step forward again. The sound was small compared to plasma lances, almost insulting in a room built for grand weapons, but every head turned toward it. Jack did not celebrate. He did not even breathe differently. He shifted Evelyn behind the thick base of the treaty table and pressed a small black object into her hand. Hold this. She looked down. Is this a weapon? It is a tool. Point it only where you want the problem to stop. Her fingers trembled around it. I have never used one. Then today is a bad day to learn fancy. Kel finally reached them with 3 guards, anger covering the fear in his eyes. Human, stand aside. Jack looked past him, counting footsteps. Your formation leaves the left corridor open. Our formation has protected my sovereign line for centuries. Your formation just lost the room. For the first time, Kel had no answer. Above them, the treaty screens flickered back to life for 1 broken second. Lord Marcus Vale appeared in the reflection of the black glass, still standing at the far end of the hall, untouched, calm, watching Evelyn as if the chaos around her was merely a vote going his way. Jack saw him. Evelyn saw Jack see him. And in that instant, she understood this was not an attack on a ceremony. This was an attack on her. For 1 breath, Evelyn waited for Captain Kell to become the man his uniform promised he was. He had sworn before the Star Throne when she was a child, one hand over the royal crest, his voice ringing through the hall while she stood beside her mother and believed every word. My life before the sovereign line. My shield before her shadow. My breath before her fear. Those words came back to her now as red emergency light washed over his armor and the grand hall filled with smoke, shouting, and broken protocol. Kell looked at the north stairs, then at the private security corridor behind the royal platform, the one that led to the Aegis evacuation shuttle. Jack saw the calculation before Evelyn did. He had seen it on faces before, in boardrooms, in alleys, in places where good intentions lasted until the exits got crowded. Kell was not deciding how to save her. He was deciding how to survive her. Captain, Evelyn said, and her voice cracked in a way she hated. Get the civilians out first. Then we move to the lower shelter. Kell did not meet her eyes. Your Highness, command integrity must be preserved. Jack said nothing, but his jaw shifted. Evelyn frowned. What does that mean? One of Kell's lieutenants answered by backing toward the security corridor. Another followed. Then another. Their boots moved softly, almost politely, as if cowardice could be made respectable by doing it in formation. Kell lifted his chin. If the royal Aegis is captured here, the entire succession defense system collapses. I must extract my command staff and re-establish control from the shuttle. Evelyn stared at him. I am the succession. The words should have stopped him. They did not. Kell gave the smallest bow of his career, clean and empty. You are compromised, Your Highness. Something inside her went very still. Around them, guests crouched behind overturned tables. Earth diplomats tried to help Varen clerks toward the side exits. The intruders were closing the hall in sections, not rushing, not shouting, confident that fear would do most of their work for them. Jack checked the small weapon in Evelyn's hands, adjusted her fingers gently, and kept his voice low. Safety is off. Keep your fingers straight until I tell you. You are doing fine. She almost laughed because nothing about her was fine. Her guards were leaving. Her uncle was watching. Her palace was blind. And the only person speaking to her like she was still a person was the human everyone had mocked yesterday. Kell turned toward Jack with sudden fury, as if the shame needed somewhere to go. This is not your concern, Deathworlder. Jack looked at him. No anger. No pride. Just a flat, tired disappointment. She hired me. A contract does not outrank royal command. No, Jack said. But it seems to be doing better than your oath. Kell's face changed. Not enough for the crowd to notice, but Evelyn noticed. The truth had touched him, and he hated the human for putting it where everyone could see it. A sharp tone sounded from the private corridor as the shuttle doors unlocked for Aegis command. Kell stepped back. Evelyn took one step after him, not because she expected him to stay, but because some younger part of her needed to see the betrayal all the way through. Adrian, she said, using his first name for the first time since she was 12. Please. That almost did it. For a second, he looked like a man remembering who he used to be. Then another burst of light flashed near the east arch, and fear won. Kel turned and disappeared into the corridor with half the royal aegis behind him. The door sealed. Evelyn did not cry. She did something worse. She went quiet. Jack recognized that quiet. It was the sound people made when the world took away an idea they had built their life around. He wanted to say something kind, but kindness had to wait until they were alive to use it. Princess, he said. Can you walk? She looked at the sealed door. They left me. Yes, ma'am. You are still here. Yes, ma'am. She looked at him then, really looked at him, at the dust on his suit, the bruise darkening along his cheek, the plain earth watch on his wrist, the old notebook sticking out of his pocket with her escape routes written in blunt pencil. Why? Jack glanced toward the service tunnel behind the treaty platform, the one the palace architects had forgotten and the human had not. Because you are not cargo. You are not a symbol. And I do not leave clients in burning rooms. Another device clicked somewhere beyond the smoke. Jack moved between her and the sound, calm as winter. Door behind you. 10 steps. Do not run until I say run. Evelyn swallowed, lifted the little weapon with both hands, and for the first time in her life, followed the bodyguard instead of the crown. The service tunnel behind the treaty platform was not built for royalty. It was low, narrow, and painted the flat gray of places no one was supposed to admire. Pipes ran along the ceiling. Utility lights blinked in tired yellow strips. The air smelled like dust, warm metal, and cleaning solvent. Evelyn had lived in the palace all her life and had never stepped inside it. Jack moved like he had been waiting for a hallway exactly this ugly. Duck under that pipe, he said. Keep your left hand on the wall. If I stop, you stop. Evelyn obeyed, breathing too fast, the small earth weapon held in both hands the way he had shown her. Behind them, the grand hall sounded distant now, like a storm trapped behind stone. Her whole world was back there, the banners, the cameras, the polished floor, the throne officers who had bowed to her yesterday and would pretend tomorrow that they had always been loyal. Jack stopped at the first junction and listened, not with theater, not with a dramatic tilt of the head. He simply became still. Evelyn almost ran into him. What is it? She whispered. 3 behind us. Maybe 4. They are trying to be quiet. Can we outrun them? No. He said it without cruelty, which somehow made it worse. Then he set his duffel bag on the floor and opened it. Inside were things that looked insultingly ordinary. Zip ties, tape, a compact flashlight, medical gauze, a folding knife, a coil of thin cord, 2 small metal wedges, and a half-empty pack of peppermint gum. Evelyn stared. This is your equipment? Jack pulled off his suit jacket and handed it to her. Hold this. Mr. Callahan. Jack is fine. And yes, this is my equipment. He tore a strip from his shirt sleeve and wrapped it around a shallow cut on his forearm, pulling it tight with his teeth. For the first time, Evelyn noticed his hands were not perfectly steady. There was a fine tremor in his fingers, there and gone, like his body was making a private argument he refused to join. He was not fearless. That realization hit her harder than his calm. He was afraid and working anyway. You are hurt, she said. I have been worse. That is not reassuring. Was not meant to be. He chewed the gum, stuck it against the back of a tiny inspection mirror, and fixed the mirror low near a corner pipe. Then he wedged one service door half shut, tied a loose cable across ankle height, and emptied a wall-mounted fire suppression canister into a slow white cloud that drifted along the floor. Nothing looked heroic. Nothing looked advanced. It looked like a janitor had lost a fight with a hardware store. Evelyn tried to understand. You are making traps. I am making decisions for them. He clicked off the flashlight and pointed down the corridor. They think this tunnel is a straight line. I want them to keep thinking that until it costs them time. You learned this on Earth? Jack paused just long enough for a memory to cross his face. Snow. Bad roads. A radio call that never came. A friend whose name he still did not say out loud. Earth teaches a lot of things people do not put in brochures. Footsteps whispered behind them. Evelyn lifted the weapon too high. Jack gently pressed her wrists down. Breathe. Shoulders loose. You are not trying to look brave. You are trying to stay useful. That sentence, simple and almost rude, steadied her more than any royal prayer ever had. The first shadow reached the white cloud near the corner. Jack watched the mirror, not the hallway. His breathing slowed. Evelyn saw him count without moving his lips. 1, 2, 3. Then he took her hand and pulled her into a side alcove, so small her shoulder brushed his chest. The pursuers entered the junction, careful, professional, completely focused on the path ahead. The loose cable snapped tight. The fire foam rose in their sensors. The wedge door slammed with a hard metal crack, splitting them apart without a single grand weapon being fired. Jack leaned close to Evelyn's ear and whispered, "Now we move." As they slipped through the maintenance hatch, Evelyn looked back once. The palace had given her gold, ceremony, and guards who knew how to bow. The human had given her 10 more seconds to live, built from tape, dust, and fear under control. They did not run through the maintenance level. Jack would not let her. Running made noise, burned air, and turned fear into a steering wheel. He kept Evelyn moving at a hard walk, one hand lightly behind her shoulder, guiding her around corners before she could hesitate. Behind them, the intruders recovered faster than he liked. They were not amateurs. They cut through the wedged door, bypassed the service alarms, and started spreading out in pairs. Jack listened to them through the walls, boots on metal, quiet hand signals, professional patience. "They are learning," he said. Evelyn glanced at him. "That sounds bad." "It is honest." They reached a laundry chute chamber where royal linens traveled through clear tubes to the lower domestic wing. Jack studied the pipes, the emergency shutoff wheel, the old gravity lift marked staff only in Varan script, and smaller Earth standard letters underneath. He almost smiled. Finally, something useful. Evelyn was still trying to hold the weapon correctly, but her hands were shaking again. "How can you be calm?" Jack looked at the door behind them. "I am not calm." "You look calm." "That is training." "And what does training feel like?" He checked the remaining rounds, counted them twice, and did not pretend the number was good. Like being scared in a straight line. Before she could answer, the first pair reached the hallway. Their sensor visors swept left and right, searching for heat, movement, panic. Jack pulled Evelyn behind a rack of silver tablecloths and lifted one finger to his lips. The white fire foam from the earlier corridor had smeared across one intruder's visor, forcing him to rely on the suit display. Jack waited. That was the part Evelyn found impossible. He did not strike at the first chance. He let the moment ripen. The pursuers stepped over the first cord, saw the second, and missed the third because it was not at ankle height. It was tied to the laundry release above their shoulders. Jack tugged once. A rush of heavy ceremonial fabric dropped from the chute. Not dangerous, not dramatic, just thick enough to blind their sensors and tangle their arms for 3 precious seconds. Jack moved through those seconds like he owned them. 2 short cracks echoed in the chamber, aimed at equipment, not bodies. Lights burst from the intruders' visors. One stumbled into the wall. The other lost his weapon into a laundry bin and shouted for backup. Jack grabbed Evelyn's wrist. Now. They slipped into the staff lift as more footsteps rounded the corner. Evelyn hit the manual button the way he had taught her, not the glowing touch panel, the real button under the cracked plastic cover. The lift dropped with a stomach-turning lurch. For the first time since the Grand Hall, Evelyn let out a breath that almost became a sob. She pressed it down, ashamed. Jack noticed, but he did not make a soft speech out of it. "You are still standing," he said. "That counts." She looked at him, eyes bright under the emergency light. "You make it sound simple." "It is not simple. It is just next." The lift doors opened into the lower kitchen corridor, a place of steam vents, storage lockers, and old tile. 3 palace workers were hiding behind overturned carts, frozen in fear. One was a young kitchen aide no older than 17, clutching a broken communication tablet. Evelyn started toward them, but Jack caught her sleeve. "Wait." He scanned the corridor, then nodded. "All right. Keep low." The workers stared when they saw her. "Your Highness," the youngest whispered. Evelyn almost answered like a princess, with reassurance polished smooth for public grief. Instead, she looked at Jack, then back at them. "Can you walk?" Jack gave her the smallest nod. That was when the chase changed. She was not just cargo anymore. She was listening. She helped the workers into the storage room, showed them where to lock the manual latch, and handed the young aide her jeweled outer cloak because the boy was shaking from cold and shock. Jack watched her do it, and something in his face eased for half a second. Then the palace speakers cracked overhead. Lord Marcus Vale's voice filled the corridor, warm, controlled, almost kind. "Evelyn, stop hiding behind the human. This can still end with dignity." Jack looked up at the speaker, then toward the air vent above the pantry door. His eyes narrowed. "He is not talking to you." Evelyn went still. Then who is he talking to? Jack raised the weapon toward the ceiling, listening to a faint metallic scrape above them. The people he sent through the walls. The ceiling above the pantry door gave one more soft scrape, so faint Evelyn would have missed it before today. Jack did not miss it. He stepped backward, placed 2 fingers against Evelyn's shoulder, and guided her behind the steel prep counter without taking his eyes off the vent. The palace workers huddled in the storage room behind the manual latch, breathing through their hands, trying to become invisible. Lord Marcus Vale kept speaking through the overhead system, his voice smooth as warm tea. "You were always sentimental, Evelyn. That was your weakness. You saw Earth as a partner. I saw it as an infection dressed in a suit." Evelyn looked at the speaker grill like it had become a living thing. "You did this for politics?" Marcus gave a soft sigh that sounded almost fatherly, and that made it worse. "I did this for survival. Our bloodline has ruled because we did not place our trust in unstable species from unstable worlds." Jack reached up, slowly turned the stove knobs without lighting them, and let a thin hiss of kitchen vapor roll into the room. Evelyn noticed his movements and did not ask. Not yet. She was learning the value of quiet. "The royal aegis ran because you paid them," she said. Her voice shook, but it did not break. "Not all of them," Marcus replied. "Some only needed permission to be what they already were." That hurt her more than the pulse, more than the alarms, more than the sight of Captain Kell walking away. Jack saw it land. He saw the princess take the truth into herself and age 10 years in one breath. On Earth, he had seen that look after house fires, hospital calls, folded flags, divorce papers on kitchen tables. It was the look people got when the world did not just hurt them, but corrected them. The vent cover shifted. Jack raised one hand, palm down, telling everyone to stay low. Evelyn whispered, "What is he waiting for?" "Line of sight," Jack said. "He wants you talking. Wants your head up." "Why?" "Because people aim better when someone else does the distracting." The vent cover dropped onto the tile with a flat clatter. No one screamed. Jack had chosen well. Fear had finally become discipline. A shadow moved inside the duct. Jack tossed a metal serving tray across the kitchen. It struck the far wall with a ringing crash. The figure in the vent turned toward the sound. Jack pulled Evelyn with him through the vapor and into the walk-in freezer alcove. Not the freezer itself, but the narrow space between its outer wall and the stacked supply crates. He shut the half door with his foot. "Cold air sinks," he whispered. "Vapor follows it. Their sensors will read the freezer first." Evelyn stared at him. "You think of everything." "No, I think of enough." Marcus spoke again, sharper now. "Mr. Callahan, you are an employee. You have performed admirably. Walk away, and you will be compensated beyond anything your primitive contracts could imagine." Jack leaned against the crate, checking the small cut on his arm, then the corridor reflection in a dented pan. "Tell him I am thinking about it," he murmured. Evelyn blinked. "What?" "He needs to believe I am greedy." She swallowed, then lifted her voice. "He is considering your offer." A pause followed. It was tiny, but Jack heard the satisfaction inside it. Marcus believed money explained humans. That was his mistake. Jack shifted closer to the freezer control panel and pressed the manual defrost override. Warm condensation burst from the old vents, fogging the corridor in seconds. "Move when I tap twice," he whispered. "Where?" "Old throne stairs. You said the coronation chamber has a broadcast dais." "It does, but it is above us." "Good. People looking down forget to look up." Marcus laughed through the speakers. "You see, Evelyn? Even your Deathworlder understands value." Jack tapped once against her wrist. Then a second time. They slipped out through the fog as the sealing team dropped into an empty kitchen, blind, angry, and late. Evelyn followed the human into the servants' stairwell, not as a symbol, not as cargo, but as a princess who had finally learned the difference between a shield and a costume. Halfway up the stairs, Jack stopped so suddenly she nearly hit his back. Above them, beyond the old wooden door to the coronation chamber, someone was already clapping. The clapping behind the coronation chamber door was slow, polite, and cruel. Jack pressed Evelyn back against the stairwell wall and listened. One person clapping, two others breathing near the pillars. A low electrical hum from the broadcast dais. Marcus was not hiding anymore. He wanted an audience. Evelyn looked at Jack's face and saw the cost of the last hour written there in small human details. The tightness around his eyes, the careful way he held his left arm, the sweat at his collar, the stubborn refusal to let pain become the most important thing in the room. "Can we still do this?" she whispered. Jack checked the old wooden door, then the narrow maintenance ladder bolted to the wall beside it. "Not through the door." She followed his eyes upward. "That ladder goes to the choir balcony." "How far?" 20 feet, maybe 25. Jack nodded like she had told him the price of gas. "Good." From inside the chamber, Marcus called out. "Come in, Evelyn. The palace is watching. Let us not make this undignified." Evelyn's mouth hardened. "He keeps saying dignity like it means silence." Jack looked at her then. "Where I come from, dignity is what you do when nobody can force you to do the right thing." She held that sentence for a second, then started climbing. Her hands were sore. Her feet hurt. The old ladder shook under her, and every royal lesson she had ever learned felt useless compared to the plain instruction Jack whispered beneath her. "Slow. 3 points of contact. Keep breathing." They reached the choir balcony above the chamber, while Marcus stood below on the broadcast dais, dressed in perfect white, speaking to every screen in the palace. He told them Evelyn had been lost in the attack. He told them the Earth Treaty was over. He told them fear was wisdom. Then the balcony door opened. Evelyn stepped into the light, dusty, shaken, alive. The chamber went silent so completely that even Marcus forgot his next word. Jack came through behind her, pale and unsteady, but standing. No speech, no dramatic pose, just the quiet fact of him. Evelyn walked to the rail and looked down at her uncle. "You were right about one thing, Marcus." The palace was watching. Marcus tried to recover. "My dear, you are confused." Evelyn lifted the small weapon Jack had given her, not to threaten, but to show the room what trust had looked like when the shields failed. "No, for the first time today, I am not." The broadcast system, still connected through the old coronation circuit, carried her voice to every hall, kitchen, shelter, and shuttle bay. She did not shout. She did not curse him. She simply named what he had done, named the guards who had run, named the workers who had stayed, and named the human who had treated a contract with more honor than royal blood had treated an oath. Captain Kell was found in the shuttle corridor minutes later, surrounded by the officers he had chosen over his princess. He looked smaller without the music, without the armor glow, without the story he had told himself. Evelyn did not insult him. That would have been easier. She only said, "You taught me what a shield is not." By sunrise, the palace was quiet in a different way. Not the quiet of fear. The quiet after a storm, when people begin counting what can still be saved. Jack sat on the lower steps of the coronation chamber with a blanket around his shoulders and a cup of water in both hands. Evelyn sat beside him, ignoring 3 advisors who kept trying to make her rest somewhere more royal. "I hired you for appearances," she said. Jack stared into the cup. "A lot of people hire security for appearances." "And you knew?" "I suspected." "Why did you take the job?" He looked toward the kitchen corridor, where the young aide he had helped was now carrying water to other survivors. "Because sometimes appearances put you close enough to do something real." Evelyn did not answer for a while. Outside, Vera's twin suns were rising over the broken silver towers, touching the palace with light it had not earned yet. She finally said, "Your world made you hard." Jack shook his head. "No, ma'am. My world taught me hard is not enough. Plenty of hard people quit. The trick is staying decent when quitting would be easier." Years later, children on Vera would learn that the treaty with Earth was not signed in the Grand Hall, under banners and cameras, but on the cracked steps of an old coronation chamber, beside a tired human bodyguard who asked for no statue. Evelyn signed it with shaking hands. Jack witnessed it with his old pencil. And when the galaxy asked what Earth had brought to the stars, she gave the only answer that mattered. "Restraint," she said, "and the terrifying mercy of people who still choose to stand between danger and someone else."